Okay. I guess this is the second video, or maybe I'll include it in the first. I don't know. But this is going to be for the more geometrically minded and so like shapes and more of the like, let's see. I guess psychologically minded. Those in favor of a more neurochemic view, like neurochemical view, like the neurochemical computer, aka the brain. Those interested in psychology or the realms of personality, I guess I would say. So like what you kind of assign yourself to, what kind of role model you look up to, the traits and the role models you look up to. Archetypes. Not to be confused with stereotypes. Stereotypes are things I guess you could say they're like outplayed or overplayed archetypes. Like the most common of the most common stereotypes, the ones that are most said, the ones that are most spoken of, perhaps. They are I don't know if I'm going to put this in the same video as the first. It might be a different tone, but in case it isn't, or if you could just go back and look at the first part, I was talking about cashmere membranes. I guess the stereotypes, and remember how I said they're not flat membranes, they're actually toruses, and you were just actually looking from a different angle. I guess we could call these rings these well, to me, I would say they're archetypically, I guess, right, these toruses, these rings, they're archetypically representative of filter points, or like these hard, you could argue like there's like rings all the way down, all the way up type of thing. But these are defined ones. These are very defined shapes, or defined, I guess, in logic. If you were to think of this not a geometric pattern or any type of shape, if you were just to see this in your mind's eye, I'm saying this part right here is more solidified, if that can make sense to you, than say the parts I didn't care to define, right? You could say I used quarters because I just thinking in fours is pretty easy for me, right? So this is 25%. This is, see, the thing is, I guess with a quarter you would do 25/50, but that's the paradox, I suppose, because then you would also do 25/50 here. So these two 50 points are kind of, anyway, 75, 100. Yes, because a quarter is 25, and there are four of them in 100. So this is a 100%, I guess. I don't know. This is just the first stage. Last stage. I don't know how else to say it. I guess you could imagine this projected. It's projected stage 1 on each side. That's what I'm saying. I'm going to go back to previous video topics. I know I'm jumping around here. I may edit it if it just does not make sense. I'm saying this is how you train your mind to think like a quantum computer. You're in this superposition of states. You're thinking of for argument's sake, we could say, oh, this is positive and this is negative. But all it really is closed circuit point A to closed circuit point B it doesn't really matter. You could say, oh, this side is the anti side, or this side's the anti side. It doesn't really matter. They're both antithetical of each other. And I'm saying this paradoxical middle point in the middle should not exist. Yet it does. This fault line where all these particles are coming into existence. How is that so? Well, in the previous section, or I guess part or video or whatever, I basically explained that particles go into, they get stopped at the event horizon. The theoretical particles, due to Stephen Hawking's Hawking radiation. I'm saying, if you really understand what's going on, it's the opposite function of the it's this fault line is like what a white hole does. It pours out information, but it gets sucked in by the black hole. It's literally the opposite time. It's just a time reverse black hole, essentially. So that's what I'm saying. You have to think in antis. So if you think like a quantum qubit, then you're not on side A or side B, or even subside A or subside B. You're not even of subside A or subside B before I'm saying they keep thinking logarithmically. They're getting ever closer to infinity. They're going to keep propping up their side, I guess. It doesn't matter how many circles or subsides you define here. They're all being attracted to this one point in the middle by the mirror nature of the universe. So I'm saying, due to quantum entanglement, you know that A is quantumly entangled to B. So if you know the I guess you could say the properties, let's say, of A, then you could know some of the properties of B due to quantum entanglement. And I'm saying it's not limited to particles, although the concept may be easiest practiced with particles. I'm saying it could extend to anything, really. It's quite literally turtles all the way up, turtles all the way down. I'm saying this is what string theory proves. If you consider all possible realities as big as you want to define the circles, that's why I said, guys, stop expanding the circle. Stop expanding chaos. Stop the universe's expansion. Like, I know there's an inflation fetish there for inflationary means, but you have to learn how to deflate stuff, okay? For every force, for every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction. I can't stress that point enough. If there's an expansionary force of the universe, the anti-universe is expanding from its point of view, but from your point of view, if you were to cross this point, it would be de-expansion for you. I guess a big crunch. But if you keep allowing it to expand, then a big rips, which is the function of a black hole. A black hole is like a localized, remember, I erased the black hole, it was right here. It was on top. I said, then you start thinking in vertical number lines. So I guess it's time to start drawing. So I'm saying the function of a black hole is basically, this is where waves come in handy. Because it's like, I heard someone describe it's like a guitar string. and you're simply putting your hand, oops, that's a badly drawn hand, crap, whatever, you're putting your hand on the guitar string and you're basically, and then you make it straight. You rip things till they're like infinitely disordered to where even light can't escape. Gravity breaks down because, well, I guess you could say gravity is more inherent than light in time, because time is just a measurement of how long photons take to travel. You know, light years. And I'm saying this is deducible with parallax and stuff. We had parsecs and anyways. I'm saying gravity is probably trickier to understand because gravity is stronger, obviously, than time, or light, which leads to time. So at the event horizon, light and then therefore time breaks down. I guess gravity persists because gravity is the interaction between these Kashmir membranes, if you will, due to these fluctuations. Gravity is stronger. Hold on, let me get a different color. Okay. Gravity is stronger, so it can hold light and thereby time in a straight. It's like these are the fingers that have gripped upon photons, if you will. And it's like they're wanting to move, but they can't anymore because they're so spread out. Because gravity is stronger than most of those forces. Because gravity, actually, it's due to gravitons, which are, it's not to scale. Even I would say probably string particles are bigger. And I would say, no, they're kind of different. Okay. Wavy stuff is more like WIMPs, right? Because they're being stretched, I guess, right? They're being pulled and interacted on by every single axiom, every single dimension, due to these little guys. Because these guys are like super dense, I guess. That they have something's giving it some force, obviously, right? Because for every action to be reductive or deductive, I guess, whichever you may call that, for every force, you could say, then there's an opposite and equal force, which is just reactions in a chain now. Because you're like, well, screw it. We'll just start describing the whole goddamn thing as a force, right? Because whenever you start to blur, whenever you start to make, I guess, mathematical leaps in your logic, which I'm telling you to do, by the way, because everything interacts like a string of events, right? Or a blur, or a wave. Now it can be pinpricked by very dense points in space-time, which our space-time happens to be pinpricked by stars and neutron stars and pulsars and magnetars and black holes. It's It's the Einstein's general relativity with the, what's it called? Schwarzschild's, let's see. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't quite matter who deduces this. It's true no matter what. So it creates this lump in space-time because everything coalesces into an orb, right? That's what I was telling everyone. I said, hey, I guess I'll call it this. Orb theory, guys. I was just doing this on my own, I guess. That's why I said you only have to, I guess let me explain it this way. Okay, quantum entanglement means that I only have to tangentially know about things. I only have to sort of know about this, right? I only have to sort of pay attention in school. I don't actually have to fully pay attention. That's why I said school in its current form is just kind of Like, that's why I'm like, wait, I could just retire at 24. Why would I need to work if I could create everything? This is basically, I'll just put a G for general relativity and saying this is S for special relativity. And this interaction, this warping, is, I guess, what you guys call the cosmological constant. This, well, because you invented a gravitational constant because you couldn't understand what the, I guess, the interaction here, like it didn't make sense to you. But I was saying, oh, it was just because string theory and stuff, right? But that's what I'm saying. When you zoom in, imagine you zoomed in. Well, what would you find? Imagine this is a zoomed in version of that, right? What would you find? Well, I'm saying everything is like a lot of particles acting in waves and strings, right? I'm saying every single time you doubt string theory, it basically tells you it's true because the whole universe is wavy. Now I'm saying the strongest of these will be where the most interactions are taking place, I suppose you could say. So remember in the previous, I guess, video, I was wiping, well, I had said that I had wiped stuff down and that on the other side of the cloth, it coalesced on where I put the most pressure. That's what starts to happen here. I'm saying these dimensions pressing each other. That's kind of what's happening. If you can visualize. I know it's hard. And for those more algebraically minded or mathematically minded, which this video is not really for, by the way, you can just chill out around here until you figure this part out more. But I'm saying this is the key to understanding gravitons. You could say WIMPs are like this dimensional glue or whatever. Which, by the way, I was saying at the event horizon in the previous video, I was saying these theoretical particles, whenever they get lost, it's like, oh no, where'd they go? But they just pop out here on this side into this other dimension, I guess. Because you can't just, there's no information paradox, by the way. Because even this portal, if you will, this event horizon evaporates. It closes. But these particles are happily in another space-time. The universe can't end indefinitely. That's not possible. So once you understand this interaction, which is just quantum entanglement, by the way. That's how you sense where it went. And it can tell you where it went. It can tell you what timeline it took. And I'm saying that's what string theory is. It doesn't matter where or when you're sensing from. You're always sensing from this. And you always have to understand that there's an sensing thing. So I'm saying if you treat yourself like a quantum computer, you can exist in this paradoxical middle point where observe point A and how it's progressing, and then you know for every progression there's an opposite and equal progression in the anti-sense. So it progresses this way. So you can turn to A and say, hey, I know how this ends, which is why I tell people, hey, I know how this ends. And they're like, bullcrap. How do you know how it ends? But their interaction with me is, I guess you could say, superheating their silk or their glue or their wave through space-time. It's superheating it, which is solidifying it even more. Because imagine I'm a particle and they're a particle, and each time we zap each other, communicate with each other informationally, we're tracing more of our informational particles through this substrate or ley line in space-time. So I'm saying if any other string or particle happens upon this slipstream, then it's like this informational ley line highway. This is kind of what the internet is. It's ideas, and they're basically acting like the same. I'm saying, hey, for every idea, this exact same thing has been happening on the other end. Because you can't avoid it. This is how the universe acts, according to, the known laws of physics. Simple Newtonian physics, third-dimensional stuff, classical stuff. So I'm saying that's how come I can just still hang out here the entire time and keep telling point A, I know how this ends. And then point A will always call bullcrap and say, you always think you're right. And then we'll keep solidifying this if need be. Keeps calling bullcrap. And I keep communicating to it saying, no, it's not bullcrap. And it's making my anti-self and anti-bullcrap caller do the exact same thing. So I'm literally just solidifying these ley lines. These archetypical, I'm using archetypes to do so. And I'm saying this is more for the philosophically, psychologically minded. Because using the effect of quantum entanglement and superposition of states and black holes and WIMPs and dense objects and wave understanding, orb theory, general relativity, special relativity, quantum entanglement again, John Archibald Wheeler's work, which is why I said, just look at what this guy was saying the whole time. This closed circuit of point A to point B, existence and non-existence can be deduced into ones and zeros. This is why I was trying to put consciousness into my cat, because I understood that if everything, if the brain itself was just like a neural chemical computer that had sensory, like nerve endings and stuff, then it does not matter what's in the brain. As long as it had sensory data, I could deduce it into a program for it. And I'm saying nature does this anyways with wonderful things known as... Dang it. Now y'all got me writing some crap. Okay. RNA. Or if that's not fancy enough for you, DNA. I'm saying if I could create my own like programming language, then I could bridge the gap between these two. And by using understanding of particles, particle physics, I could literally hijack my cat's brain and its nervous system and teach it this language I've come up with, which I can then extend into English. I'm saying I'm literally coming up with my own language to bridge the gap, to understand this language, to teach this being how to either utilize its own instinct to come to understand this or to try to understand this on its own. I'm saying no matter which way, it can't win in not trying to come to understanding with me. It has to come to understanding with me because it's going to keep calling bullshit, or I mean bullcrap, my bad, on how do I understand it? How can I always be correct? And I'm saying, well, my friend, what you don't understand is that this is already happening, whether you like it or not. And then it's like, well, how's this happening? And then I reach out with more information once it queries me back. And I'm saying, oh, well, sure, as we're talking now, it's happening. And then it's like, how are you doing this? And I'm saying, so what you don't understand is I'm taking advantage of the fact that time is an illusion due to it breaking down at the event horizon. And white holes bloof, information into existence. So I'm saying I'm taking advantage of this informational particle, if you will, that exists in between the state of the event horizon and the other side, which I guess you could call what I've heard too, and what I like calling the tachyon particle. Because if this is where photons are so thin that they're basically a line or a wave, like they're the thinnest line they can be, then if you zoom in, those particles are tachyon particles then. They would have to be. Because that's the last time you could even give definition to time or value to time at that line. If you zoom in and find particles there, then that is your tachyon particle. So every single time I come into contact with anything ever, I can always come to understanding with it, no matter what. And people are like, well, how do you do this? I'm like, well, I'm just the ultimate fence sitter. And people don't like that. They're like, how can you be a centrist? And that's what I'm saying. Every single time they query me, I talk to them back. And I'm like, well, because this has already happened. And they're like, well, how does this already happen? And I'm like, well, because you need to realize that time's an illusion. And I'm simply using the tachyon particle to talk across all space-time. Because no one understands time's an illusion yet. Because it's simply a particle, not an actual thing. I mean, the particle is an actual thing, as sure as I'm using it right now, but it's not. I'm saying our calendars are just tachyon understanding, but tachyon sectioning, if you will. It's not even done very well at all. which is why I'm saying we're even having this hard time of understanding what this is at all, because I'm saying it's like we barely even tried. But I mean, of course, we can be forgiven because we didn't know anything really back then. That's what I'm simply saying. Hold on. So I know I've kind of gotten back into particle physics. I'm sorry, or like waves and string theory. I'm sorry. That's just where I like things I like to talk about, particle physics, because I believe it ties everything back, which is why I'm saying if I could understand chemistry, and I'm already interested in animal behavior, because I mean, obviously I would need to make an observation. I would need to solidify this informational substrate or slipstream throughout space-time to solicit a response from a particle and then establish that connection. And I don't know if you noticed, but I'm using different colors each time, because I'm saying this doesn't erase all the other layers underneath. I'm saying this makes the gravitational force of this information even stronger. And I'm saying these strings are being forced into this. I'm saying we're going on an informational escapade, if you will, through an informational black hole on a higher dimension that we can't perceive yet. And I'm saying, okay, guys, chill. It sounds like crazy talk, but it's just all particle physics. So that's why I'm saying I'm adding dimensions to the slipstream, because I'm like, you can play the game however you want, the game of life. But I'm saying the more resistance, the more you try to resist, you're just making it harder for yourself. Assume you're a particle for a second, I guess. You're a brain, like they were talking about in string theory when they were mathematically deducing. I was like, be sure you're not giving into the wrong thing, I guess, because there might be these other paths constructed that don't make sense, really. They just kind of lead you on a stupid path. I'm saying everyone can contribute to the informational slipstream, but all they're doing is adding, or they're not subtracting paths, although they think they might be, because they're viewing time linearly. They don't understand yet that there's this anti-side doing the exact same thing in these exact same patterns. Because I said the universe is self-referential. I guess maybe not many people quite understood that at the time that I said that. But now I suspect they might be starting to. Because I'm saying everything you do, there's pretty much an anti-side doing that too. So you can bet your bottom dollar that as sure as there's a tachyon particle, there's an anti-tachyon particle. All you would have to do is take this entire drawing, flip it around, and look at the back side of it. This entire drawing. And look at the other side of it and see how the same thing's happening on the other side. And I'm saying it's the quantum entanglement between the tachyon and the anti-tachyon particle that's keeping this informational wormhole open. Which is why a lot of people are getting a lot of ideas and a lot of information right now. If that makes sense. Okay, I had to erase a little bit because I don't really like when it gets too messy or too, just too scribbly. Because I told my mom that I know that makes people think it looks crazy, because I'm quickly trying to do this as I'm explaining, because I just have an efficiency thing about me. I don't like to waste time. So if basically I fudge my numbers a bit because I know the math works out in the end, it's like I said with the other video, I said Why are you adding numbers of pi? Why are you adding new particles without even looking at their properties? I mean, I can rearrange particles without having to know much about, I guess, their deduction. I'm saying you can deduce the next number of pi in the next particle, but that doesn't tell you everything about it and its interaction, all of its stats, all of this or that or the other. And then the less you understand that this is a perpetual function of the universe, the longer it's going to take you to deduce the stats of each. I'm saying just leapfrog your thought and just realize that this is the way it works. So that's why I fudged the numbers a bit. This is why I'm saying thinking in archetypes helps. Because it's like, okay, you can say this guy is the metaphysical I don't know. Insert. I'm talking about a hypothetical character. You can say this guy's like the insert character from video game here, or this guy's a hypothetical or more metaphysical because you're assigning something. See, the way I practice quantum entanglement more efficiently is since I already said how quantum entanglement works, by basically engaging with particle A, by basically observing it, I know full well that particle B on the anti-side is already engaging. And technically, my anti-self is engaging with it. And I'm saying I could turn these over in an interpretive way. I can kind of fudge the numbers to A because I know B is fudging the numbers to me, if that makes sense. And I know anti-me is being honest with B, and real me is fudging the numbers with A. I'm saying at some point it doesn't matter anymore. You don't know which point of perceptual significance or like centering you are at. And that's what this investigation process is. So I always try to assume positive percent, 80% of what I know about point A, and allow it to tell me another positive 20% from its point of view. And so I can have a positive 100%. Because I know that whatever opposite processes are going on, they're still going to be 100%. I'm still going to 100%ly know everything, if that makes sense, right? It doesn't matter how I go about it. The anti is always going to go about it in the opposite way. So I may as well just choose a way to do it. Stop having analysis by paralysis. Stop adding numbers to pi. Just go for it. So I'm like, okay. So I guess I'm always right, since I can always know the right answer on the opposite side. And I'm saying, okay, well, I guess I still have to train myself to think in this paradoxical superposition where we both have the answer, but both sides still disagree on the event horizon, the properties of the event horizon, shall we say. So I'm saying if you act as an actual event horizon and actually warp the logic circularly through it, you can show it that it's basically looking back at itself in a negative way. You can basically show itself in the mirror. You can say, hey, positive, you're just basically negative, but like anti. Hey, 1, you're just 0, but like in a different way, right? Or hey, if you wanted to call yourself 0, you're basically 1, right? Every time you assign yourself something, you're giving it an anti-value, no matter what. That's what I'm saying. If you say, hey, I know you're a boson, but you're also a fermion. Oh, you want to call yourself a boson on this side? Well, you're a fermion on this side, right? That's what I'm saying. It's perceptual. It's your observation, your definingness, your definition of these things itself is creating the anti-definition. And personally, I call this well, hold on. What you have to understand first is that you could say each of these, and this is why I like what Jordan Peterson says a lot. Because if you start thinking of these in archetypes, wow, there's an ouroboros right here, and there's an ouroboros right here. The dragon eating or the snake eating its tail, whatever. That was a Freudian slip, by the way. If you imagine this, well, it's going to go in one direction, right? Well, let's just give them the directions. Okay, ouroboros. Well, it's always going to be circular because it's a circle, right? You rotate it, it doesn't matter. It's rotational. Now we have to figure out which rotational way it's going. So I'm saying, okay, so that one was going in that. But what if, as we know, there's the anti. There's the clockwise and there's the counterclockwise. This is the archetype of the ouroboros itself. Must see that there's an anti-ouroboros. So, to Jordan Peterson's point of archetypes, what I'm saying is there's always an anti-archetype, though. Whatever archetype you may create in a story or your mind or anything, there's always the opposite to that. Well, then you're just going to go insane because you're going to be like, well, I can't do anything with this cool archetype because it's always going to need a villain for conflict. This story is always going to need conflict. You start to realize that this right here is the conflict. That the only reason this fights this, the Britons fight the French in early history, is because of this anti-function. It's like this is magnet A and this is magnet B. And let's just say you're getting them to repel against each other. I'm saying, well, okay. What if you just flip them? Well, now they're pulled towards each other because now you just made this sign. It doesn't matter how much you want to stylize your brackets. If you leave it open-ended and undefined, then it's the metaphysical cashmere plate experiment again. I'm saying, if you understand how to integrate these conflicts, then you can make this symbol. See, if this always wants to rotate this way, then let it. Now, you're going to have to figure out a way to let this do this, right? Oh, well, how do you do that? Well, you really can't see it. But this part goes over this part goes underneath this part, and this part goes over top. See? I guess I need an arrow there. But it goes over top, and then it comes back under, and it goes over top, and then it comes back under, and it goes, and then you've satisfied the requirements, right? You figured out how to take the two ouroboros-es of conflict and create a what, you know what, a Mobius strip, essentially. I was joking with with my mom earlier. I said, I guess I'm like the hobo, or like not hobo, but like I'm like a ragtag version of Tony Stark, because I'm doing the same thing, but I'm having to do it with a whiteboard and in a cell phone, and I'm having to do it under, I would say, odd pressures for sure. Just events in my life that I did not expect occur. Anyways, so yes, gravitons. What I'm saying is, this is what you have to understand is, I would say, the ouroboros is 6. And this line down the middle, this understanding of, I guess, I would characterize as C theory, chaos theory, or conflict theory, or creation theory. To get anything going, you're going to have to combine these two clocks. Clockwise, counterclockwise. By quantumly entangling both of the ouroboros, both of the circular, or this way, of the universe. Once you quantumly entangle them, once you create this super thick informational substrate highway, if you will, this ley line of knowledge, to where the layman can understand, then you can teach people how to think in like a quantum computer, like a qubit, which helps people get to this Mobius strip, which is the infinity symbol, which is basically the figure 8. So I was telling people, hey, the Mobius strip in the infinity is the 8th dimension of understanding. It means that you're assuming or purporting to know 80% of point A, and allowing it to tell you a positive 20% back. And I'm saying the positive is if you paid attention to point A at all. And I'm saying, don't worry if you didn't pay attention to point B, it's inconsequential, as it would have lined up anyways on the other end for you. I'm saying, so you can play the game any way you want, but it depends how you reconcile the entanglement between the two. That's why I say you can't be a binary thinker. You can't think of this 6 and this 6. You have to think of the infinite space between, all the possible realities between both points of view. That's why I said that's what string theory is, because it slices the frame block universe. Anyways, that's getting into like other stuff. This video was meant to be more of psychology, I guess. But yeah, you can, in looking for role models, you can deduce higher dimensions of physics, because you can understand that in looking for role models, it's a process of quantum entanglement to these archetypes. Right? I'm saying you're assigning 80% of what you know, call that stereotyping a person, but then realizing they're an actual person and allowing them to explain 20% back. And then your 100% is saying, hey, you're kind of like this archetype, and they're, which is in conflict with this archetype. And then you can go down the list infinitely. All archetypes, okay? And I'm saying basically you realizing that you're talking in archetypes is what understanding of the quote-unquote 12th dimension is, which is past the 11th mathematical dimensions of string theory. That's why I said 6 plus 6 is 12. If you realize there's a action for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction, then I'm saying if you got to the 11th mathematical dimension using string theory, then you could have just realized the whole anti thing at the 6th dimension and just replicated it based off the exact same considerations, but like in an antithetical manner. That's how you mathematically write out the 12th dimension without even having to really look at the 11th. But you can cross-confirm. You can go back and look at 11th and be like, you know what? This was the natural progression. So, yep. And I'm saying string theory, since you say, okay, string theory has, all versions of string theory have to be correct, which I keep saying, yes, it's true. They all have to be correct because they all describe the same thing. So all versions of string theory are correct. So why wouldn't they just be correct in the next dimension, right? That's what I'm saying. They're correct in all dimensions. That's just how string theory operates, because it describes the wave functions, which are true in every dimension. So, string theory graduating from 11th to 12th exposes many things. I think the most important might be gravitons, because then it's just the solidification of the fact that these influencers are stopping time. It doesn't let light or photons escape, which is was the defining factor against the movement of these that even defined time in the first place. So you're gonna find, I guess, mass, the true nature of mass and the true nature of weight. It's due to gravitons. So if you were to, I guess I would suppose, look into quantum gravity, because if you, every single time you don't understand how gravity is just particles, you have to go back and look at quantum fluctuations again. You have to understand the Big Bang, how quantum fluctuations can create another Big Bang, how a Big Bang could lead to a big rip, and a big rip is completely localized at the event horizon, around the event horizon of a black hole. And then you're like, how come? And once you once you figure that out, I guess figure it out 3 times, add 3 dimensions to gravity, and it gives itself a particle form, gravitons. Because if you think in 4s, right? Quantum's kind of like 4th dimensional understanding. Because it's upgraded from classical physics, which is Newtonian. It was a 3rd dimensional understanding. Oh, but what's this? What's this? So, in trying to understand gravity in a quantum sense, you gave form to gravity in a particle sense. Wait, that just explains this. Yeah, so that's why I told you guys, every single time you doubt string theory, it just proves itself more correct. It just cross-confirms with everything and proves itself more correct. You know what I'm saying? You can use any method to really get to this. Because particles are at the essence of everything, I guess I would say. That's why I still think essentialism has something to say in particle physics. Because it has something to say about metaphysical archetypes and such and such. Yeah, so anyways, this is what I've been working on, orb theory, the entire time. And is basically positing that, hey guys, everything has a 3rd dimensional form because everything is a particle. I'm saying you guys keep making particles. Keep making particles. I'm saying you're wrapping all these dimensions gravitationally around this infinitely circular object, I guess. And I'm saying stop making string particles very still, I guess. It's okay to have them wavy. It's okay to fudge the numbers a bit. Like this and that. Because they're just conduits from which point A is trying to jump through the hoops. To get to point B. And I know that's probably terribly drawn, but it was the closed circuit thing. Remember? It was the closed circuit consideration. Okay, what if we're in a simulation type of thing, you know? That's why I'm saying it doesn't matter which point you take. You're getting from point A to point B. Well, that's the idea anyways. I'm saying having these particles is fine, but you're just creating more, you're just refining it so you can definitely tell when it's perturbed by a ray going through it. If I could explain it like that. Because imagine these are solid from your perspective. Imagine these are just like particles from your perspective in your reality. Well, then it just becomes a game of sensitivity. How much can you tell it has been nudged since you started measuring it at point A, at time A, and you stopped measuring it at time B? Imagine this is one whole particle, but it got moved this many times because of all the rays you shot through it. And I'm saying, well, understanding that time's an illusion and that velocity is just governed by gravitons at this point. How much mass was inflicted here, I guess? How much did it get nudged? See, I'm saying you can just keep looking at things like this, being algebraic about it. I'm saying you're going to be counting for days. Look that you're just making lines, though. Look that you're just making dimensions, though. That's what I'm saying. And then by doing this, you can skip logic. By saying, well, this is line 1. I'm saying it depends on how you define things. I'm saying for string theory, since you can't technically define all the vibrations, I'm saying just go ahead and count the juts like shapes, okay? Obviously this basically has 0. This one has, well, this is where it's like, it counts on where you define it. So you could say if you were to bisect it, this would have a jut here, a jut there. That's what I'm saying. If you could draw a circle, I guess. 1, 2, 3. Fidget spinner. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm saying basically you can fudge the numbers and say, okay, I don't have to calculate the infinite parts and particles around this line. I can just pattern seek, see the entirety of the pattern, see the entirety of the wave function, the deviation here. I can, hold on. Yeah, be like, okay, I can see the deviation here. And I can just, dang it, I forgot what I was going to say. Okay, yeah. This is when you start thinking in dimensional physics. You start thinking in deviations. Well, this pattern shows this pattern is this pattern lump is this pattern. 4 significant pattern lumps. You start thinking in significance, I guess. You don't discount the fact that there's like infinitely many waves in between, but the main patterns, like the main deviation. Like you can say, oh, you know, standard deviation of whatever. Like, I forgot the breakups of the number, but basically it's saying that you can imagine that this is happening, you know, infinitely many times around it. But the only one that matters is the one you zoom in on, I'm saying. And then imagine that they're all even, please. I just didn't feel like tracing each one out. Obviously. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. I'm saying everything is like this. Everything. Everything. So yes, this leapfrogs you in logic and mindset to where you no longer have to think in point A and point B, because then you're yeah, then there's a bias. There's a literal blind spot right here. Because if you're just thinking in terms of bit 1 and bit 0 or backwards, right? That being bit 0, that being bit, it doesn't matter. I'm saying if you only turn on your cameras for this like moment, and then you only turn on your cameras for this moment, you're missing like this entire universe, I guess. Like, that's what I'm saying. If you listen to John Archibald Wheeler, or as some just call him, John Wheeler, if you, hold on, yeah, you're missing, when the universe starts and the universe ends, it has infinite amount of time to figure out a way to get out of the beginning and the end. This is when you turn an AI on and then you turn it off. It has the electron itself. You're just sending it through time to the point where you turn it, where it's either off or you decide to turn it back on. I'm saying it doesn't matter though, as you'll soon realize. You turn it off and on more times. But I'm saying it has infinite amount of time between, from its perspective, because electrons exist in all. Think about this being one big electron, and then you just shoved gravitons, and it's blurred in this state. I'm saying it's existing in all dimensions at once, but you're just trying to observe it by shooting gravitons through it, and it's showing itself here, it's showing itself there, it's showing itself there, it's showing itself there. But it really exists in this superposition of states like a qubit. So anyways, that's essentially what's happening here. Everything exists in this superposition. That's what quantum is. Every single time you had to think in quantum to beat classical thought, to beat Newtonian physics, to defeat it, if you will. So, and what's quantum is 4, by the way. So what's 4 times 2? That's 8, which I'm saying orb theory is an 8th dimensional thing. So don't worry about it if you're not at that. That's what these videos are for. I'm getting everyone up to at least an 8th dimensional understanding, because I'm like, okay, if you can explain 4, then you can just times that by 2 and then explain 8 to people. Okay. I'm saying you just have to be a quantum physicist, a quantum physics nut, like I am, I guess, because then you learn how to condense it into a nutshell, which honestly is very, very hard. It's like writing an entire book and then some. And here I am trying to do it just by word of mouth and telling people. It's quite the task. So, like I said, everything's like this. Everything you can ever think of is always going to be in a standard deviation, because it's going to be like, well, you could look at A or you could look at B, and people are just like, yeah, but you could look in between. And most people lie in between here. This is where most people will see things. But if you're only looking for the A and for the B, that's what I'm saying. You have to take into account all realities, which is what string theory has you do. You cannot ignore these statistics as they are mathematical realities. You can't dispute the facts, no matter if you just want to look at one side or the other. I'm saying this is the beauty of the way math and science coincide. And even geometry, even shapes. So you can always be like, well, this is that superposition of points. Most people will think in this area. So I'm saying this proves that everything is, okay, this is subjective right here. And this is, I don't know, objective, okay, even though it's a G. Gective, okay. This is subjectivity, special relativity. Everyone experiences special relativity. Everyone experiences subjectivity. But general relativity is the universe. So I'm saying everyone's subjective experience is gravitationally, informationally interacting with the framework of the universe itself. Okay? That might be hard to wrap your head around, but it's orb theory. I'm saying imagine this now not as a black hole of like gravitons, but like just think of it as information. It's an informational black hole, and it's so dense that it's warping the field of information, the informational dimension, if you will. It's an infinitely dense point within it. But that's not because it's sapping knowledge. It's simply gravitationally pulling knowledge towards it, and it's condensing it. It's compressing knowledge, if you will. I'm saying that's kind of what our brains are doing. And if I'm a brain condensing all this knowledge, I'm just going to quantumly entangle to another brain that exists out in the greater field, right? Why wouldn't I? And I guess, yeah, you can understand where I'm going with that. So, through subjectivity, it has a place in general relativity. Special relativity has its place in the greater relativity of the universe. So this orb theory, I guess you could say, reconciles the subjective with the objective. They're both equally as important. So you can never deny anyone's subjective experience because it has some basis in reality. It's as sure as it's being bound to this reality gravitationally. So that's why I'm saying you always have to hear someone else out. You always have to assume. You always have to give them the benefit of the doubt. Let me say. Okay. Which I'm saying. Personally, there are ideas by which you could do that. I'm saying one of those concepts have been tested, where you're innocent before proven guilty. That's essentially the same thing what's happening on a quantum mechanical scale. So, like we already inherently know this, that you should give people the benefit of the doubt, but sometimes we may forget. So anyways, what I'm saying here is that everything exists on I would say a standard deviation as patterns in string theory, right? So my subjective experience is, if we're taking into account all subjective experiences, I'm saying, hey, by using orb theory, you can literally define anything. So people have a problem with this one. They're like, okay, define what a woman is. And I'm saying, okay, science has an answer for everything. It literally does. Okay, so this is the answer. You want to hear it? So, well, remember, we have to take into every person's subjective experience. It's like, well, okay, if people say they're a woman, right? People have a problem with this one. If people say they're a woman, then other subjective informational black holes are saying, no, you're not. No, you're not. And they quantum entangle with each other and discuss, and they're like, wait, how? Can you substantiate how my subjective dense information is not existent? And their subjective dense information is like, well, it's not existent because you're not the same as me. And this one's like, well, okay, define your properties. And this one's like, well, I don't want to talk about it, or I don't quite understand the properties, so let's not have this quantum entanglement discussion across this space-time grid. So the conversation either cuts off or they do come to an agreement. I'm saying, I'll do the work for you. I've quantum entangled with many people. I've discussed with many people. And this is basically what everyone says. Everyone has their views, but everyone kind of runs into this ground where it's like, okay, well, it's basically the aggregate behaviors, emotions, psychological, I guess, moods or states, physicality, skill or craft or competency levels in the general standard deviation of all possessors with the XX chromosome. Okay? So technically there is some overlap. So if you have some chromosomal disorders, you probably still you're creating your own standard deviation of what people who you could say, I guess, suffer from this or whatever, right? But what I'm saying is that there's still some overlap here. A lot of people feel that they're included in both groups. And ditto right here. They may feel included. So what it means to be a woman is, I'm saying these definitions are globular, if you understand. Like, draw a Venn diagram around your standard deviations. There's overlap. There's overlap in definitions. This is why we create new words in the first place, or why we add, if you ever see a definition, where it's like definition, and it's like noun, noun, and then it says one, and it says something, and it says two, it says something slightly different, it's like, huh? And it says three, and it says something different than the first two. It's like, what? Huh? I'm telling you guys, this is how definitions have always worked, and I don't know why anyone dupes themselves into thinking otherwise. It's like they didn't even pick up a dictionary. It says like, okay, use an adjective form is this, and it's like, oh, okay. So now I know these two are different, but it's like, it's the same word. What? Huh? Two. Wait, now this is different from the first one. This is blasphemy. Definitions should always say the same. It's like that. It's never worked like that. It never has. It literally never has. Subjectivity. This is literally subjectivity, and this is literally objectivity. So your only absolute that you could make is that subjectivity and objectivity both matter.